Welcome back! Today, we're jumping into an incredible story, one of faith, power, and culture that kicked off in the Arabian desert and, well, ended up shaping the entire world. So, yeah, that's the big question, right? How does that happen? It's a pretty wild journey, from just one voice to a whole global civilization. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so to really get how Islam took off, we have to rewind a bit. We need to look at the world it came from and, of course, the life of its founder, Muhammad. All right, I want you to picture this. We're in 7th century Arabia. It's this huge desert landscape, a place the Roman Empire, for all its power, never actually managed to conquer. It's mostly home to these nomadic tribes, moving with their animals, and they worshipped a whole bunch of different gods. But it wasn't all just sand. You also had these busy trading cities, and the real hub, the most important one, was Mecca. And Mecca is exactly where Muhammad is born, around the year 570. He grows up, becomes a merchant, and then, in 610, everything changes. He says he received a message, a direct revelation from God brought by an angel. Now, he starts sharing these messages, but let's just say the powerful folks in Mecca were not fans of his growing influence. Things got so tense that in 622, he and his followers had to leave. They migrated to the city of Medina. This move, called the Hijra, was so important, so foundational, that it actually marks year 1 on the Islamic calendar. So what was this message all about? Well, the absolute heart of it was monotheism, the belief in one and only one God, who in Arabic is called Allah. And what's super interesting here is that this wasn't totally out of left field for the region. This new faith shared a common ancestor with Judaism and Christianity, the prophet Abraham. Yeah, so in this new faith, prophets you've probably heard of, like Moses and Jesus, were still seen as incredibly important and respected. But Muhammad was considered the final messenger, the seal of the prophets, the last and most important one in that long line. And all those revelations he got over his lifetime, they were eventually collected and written down in the holy book we know as the Quran. But this new faith, it wasn't just about what you believed in your head. It was more like a blueprint for how to live your life, how to build a whole community. And it was all built around 5 central key practices. These are the famous 5 pillars, and they really became the bedrock of the entire Muslim community. And the thing is, they weren't just private individual duties. I mean, yeah, declaring your faith or praying 5 times a day is personal, but so much of it was about shared public action. Things like required charity, fasting together during Ramadan, and especially that massive pilgrimage to Mecca. All of these things were absolutely crucial in bringing all these different Arab peoples together into one unified community. And that unity, it became an incredibly powerful force. After Muhammad's death, the whole story shifts gears. We're about to enter a new phase, one of absolutely explosive expansion, but also one that leads to a deep, lasting division. So, Muhammad dies in 632, and the leadership passes to a series of successors known as caliphs. And these guys weren't just religious leaders, they were political leaders too. The second caliph, a man named Omar, was apparently a military genius. Under his command, Arab armies just swept across the Middle East, conquering massive territories at a speed that was, frankly, astonishing. Just to give you a sense of the scale here, get this. By the year 732, that's only 100 years after Muhammad's death, the Islamic Empire stretched from what is now Pakistan all the way across North Africa and into Spain. Its push into Western Europe was only stopped that year way deep inside what we now call France. But while the empire is getting bigger and bigger, a really critical conflict is starting to brew right at its heart. A power struggle breaks out, and a question that had been kind of bubbling under the surface for a while finally explodes into the open. Who is the rightful successor? Who really has the right to lead the entire Muslim community? And this is where the big split happens. It basically came down to this. One group, who we now know as the Sunnis, said, okay, the leadership of this powerful family, the Umayyads, is legitimate. But another group completely disagreed. They believed the leader had to be a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad himself. They backed his son-in-law, Ali, and this group became known as the Shiites. And that fundamental disagreement over who should lead, that's what created the Sunni-Shia split, a division that, as you know, is still incredibly significant in the world today. Okay, so even while all this political drama and division is happening, something else is going on. The empire itself is entering this absolutely remarkable era of cultural and scientific flourishing that we often call the Islamic Golden Age. The new capital was first set up in Damascus, and then later another dynasty moved it to the legendary city of Baghdad. And in these amazing cities, you had this explosion of knowledge. Scholars were taking all the wisdom from the peoples they'd conquered, translating ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic. This just lit a fire under advances in science, medicine, mathematics, you name it. This was a seriously sophisticated empire, even sending diplomats to talk with leaders like Emperor Charlemagne way over in Europe. So you might be wondering, what about the people who already lived in these conquered lands? Well, because of those shared roots with Abraham, Jews and Christians were given a special status. They were called people of the book. Generally, they weren't forced to convert to Islam. That said, they were definitely a protected but still second-class group. They had to live under special rules, pay an extra tax, and they faced certain restrictions, like not being able to build new churches or synagogues. And that kind of brings our whirlwind tour to a close. It's an incredible story, right? From a single message in the desert to a globe-spanning empire. Its legacy isn't just in history books. It's woven into the very fabric of our world today, which leaves us with a big question to think about. How does this 1,400-year-old story of faith, expansion, and culture still shape our world, our politics, and our lives right now? Hey, if this got you thinking, do us a favor and hit that like button. And of course, subscribe for more. We would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on that final question down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching.